do I have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars putting together a website or whatever? It can be pretty basic at first, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. What I talk about for most people is if you have $100, I have people come to me all the time like, hey, I have $100 to $500 budget. I'm like, you don't need a website, you need a Facebook page. And I tell them all, like you mentioned before, you were talking about where do you start with your money? Where do you start with advertising and stuff? Most of it's going to be word of mouth. I tell everybody if you've got $100, buy the domain name, that's $12, and then spend the rest, buy business cards with your email address on there, and then start networking and handing it out. That's the best way you can spend that first $100. If you've got 500, then buy a few extra business cards, maybe do a little bit of Facebook or Google advertising, but still, you can do almost all of that startup stuff with just a Facebook page. And one of the coolest things you can do with any of the domain providers you buy, if you buy timhinton.com, yourname.com, you can set it up to just redirect to your Facebook page. So again, if you've got a really low budget, if you have very little tech acumen, then just start up a Facebook page, ask your friends and family to like it, get those business cards out there, and start rolling it out.
The problem with social media is it can be very overwhelming when you're first starting, because it's hard to know where to start, and then you feel like if you're not everywhere, you're nowhere. And that's advice I give a lot. I work with a lot of small businesses and startups and nonprofits, and for me, it's like when someone is bootstrapping it and they don't have a big budget and they don't have a lot of time to manage social media, I tend to give the advice of like, pick the one or two channels that where your audience is, and then really double down on those channels before, or those platforms, before you start trying to compete with every other business on Twitter and every other, post influencer on Instagram. If you can really define like, hey, the people that I want to reach are, obviously band directors and other designers and other instructors, because that's my network, and somewhat I maybe want to connect with the kids as well. But really, those are who my potential. That's where my potential next paycheck is from. Then really double down there. So, well, I think Twitter and Instagram are great tools as well for a different reason. I would really focus probably on Facebook and LinkedIn. And
a couple of tips on your business profiles. So people make their decisions in less than 1/100th of a second. So think about that. You guys we've all been programmed on digital for so many years that we are going to make a decision right away. So if anybody, especially that is looking to hire you, sees that half crop picture, they're going to go, no, they're not professionals. So spend $100, get a bunch of shots done, get it put up there. Make sure a couple of things. One, that you are smiling. Again, subconsciously, people will get more warmly engaged with you, and that you're facing forward with the eye contact. So there's a lot of subliminal, if I can say that right, messages that you give on social media all the way across the board. So make sure it's warm.
The reason that you set up a corporation is to protect personal assets. And I know that when I started instructing, I didn't have a whole lot of assets to protect.
Right.
But if the career that you plan on adventuring in does well, you will at some point have stuff you want to protect.
Right.
A sole proprietorship, like Danielle mentioned, is certainly the simplest, most basic business organization, but it limits you in that your exposure is personal. And you've heard me on other podcasts, we've talked about, ethical problems and things that may arise in that context. And that, again, I have to think the entire spectrum. And if things go bad, then if you're in a sole proprietorship, all your stuff is exposed. If you get sued, heaven help, if you lose, that kind of thing, you're forced to either lose all your stuff or declare bankruptcy. A corporation is created to interpose an artificial person in between them. And it does require setting up a corporation. It requires some steps, Tim, as you know, as we've just had to deal with, some additional steps, additional paperwork, but it gives you a layer of protection that you don't have otherwise.